let's cross the bridge into the husband's world. To get why her helpful reminders can feel like a hailstorm of criticism, we have to look at the neurology underneath it all. And this isn't about him being too sensitive or difficult or whatever. It's about his brain's operating system. So let's call the wife's reminders and suggestions pings, P-I-N-G-S. To her, each ping is a small single piece of information. Take out the trash. Did you make that call? You should wear the blue shirt. Her heart's in the right place. I mean, I'm not faulting her, but to an autistic brain, these are not small isolated pings. They're piling up. There's this cumulative effect going on. They're interruptions to him, and each one carries a hidden and, quite honestly, very devastating cost. Okay, so if your spouse does or says something that you download as being disrespectful, it hurts. We'll call it hurtful. But when you replay the event, now you're hurting you. Okay, so when you replay the original thing that happened once, but you've replayed it 15 times, it feels like it's happened 15 times, and then you blame your spouse for doing it to you for 15 times when it was only once. So yeah, we'll call the original event hurtful. Shouldn't have happened, it was wrong. But your replays, it's not the other person doing it to you then, now you're doing it to yourself. Hey, quick message to all the ladies here suffering from Cassandra syndrome. It is September 24th, and I have a Cassandra syndrome recovery group starting next week, October 1st. We will be meeting 4 weeks, 1 hour a week at 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. You can email me and I'll send you the link, or you can just simply go to CassandraSyndromeRecovery.com. It's important that you join this group because you're going to be shoulder to shoulder with what I call your recovery sisters. I create a private Facebook group, and the only members of that Facebook group will be the members in the Zoom group. Okay, this is a 4-week long thing, and it's going to be instructional. It's going to help you recover from the emotional deprivation, all the damage that has been done. And sometimes there's nothing more therapeutic than being in a group of other ladies who are going through the same damn thing that you're going through. And by the way, most of these groups continue to meet after our 4 sessions are done. They continue to do face-to-face Zoom calls. They continue to converse with one another daily on the Facebook page. Don't miss out. Please don't miss out. Email me, I'll send you the link, or just simply go to CassandraSyndromeRecovery.com, and I'll see you on October 1st, okay? He feels unsafe and insecure in the relationship. This causes anxiety. He tries to reduce his anxiety. His anxiety reduction techniques cause relationship problems, and the relationship problems raise his anxiety, and then he feels even more unsafe. So the whole point of this little conversation here is, at any point along the trajectory there could be some type of intervention. Anxiety is the first thing that happens. So he can find anxiety reduction methods, some of which will not work for everybody. You know, something that may work for this guy won't work for this guy, but there are a ton of anxiety reduction strategies. So if you tackle that first thing, the anxiety, and he finds some anxiety reduction strategies, now he's not engaged in some of the more dysfunctional anxiety reduction attempts that cause relationship problems. So now you've intervened at the very front and tackled the second and third step in this. The solution is not to communicate more softly or more perfectly. You've already tried that. The real solution is to create emotional structures that protect your energy instead of leaving yourself open and exposed all day long. In this video, I want to validate those of you out there who are the neurotypical spouse suffering from Cassandra syndrome. When you're in a relationship with somebody on the autism spectrum, you can expect emotional blind spots. That would be difficulty recognizing when you, as the NT spouse, are sad, anxious, or lonely. There's going to be flat communication. In other words, conversations may lack depth, nuance, or emotional resonance. There's going to be literal thinking. That's going to be struggles with metaphor, implication, subtle social cues, and so on. There's going to be perspective taking difficulties. That's going to be a limited ability to step into your shoes. And of course, there's going to be shutdowns or meltdowns, which would be emotional overwhelm that leads to withdrawal or explosions. Now, none of these are intentional, okay? It's not purposeful cruelty. They are the natural outcomes of a brain wired differently. But that doesn't really make much difference, because for the neurotypical spouse, the effect is a steady diet of disappointment. And I'm not making your ASD spouse out to be a bad person. I'm sure they're a very good person. So we're in agreement with that. But unfortunately, when you're not getting your needs met, we have the Cassandra syndrome phenomenon. Quick message to neurotypical Ys out there that may be suffering from Cassandra syndrome. I want to talk about the cycle of silence. You know, the Cassandra dynamic often follows a predictable cycle, and you've probably lived it. First of all, there's hope. You know, you believe that this time your ASD partner will understand. Then there's disappointment. The conversation misses the mark again, and you feel more alone. Then there's conflict. You lash out in frustration, and why wouldn't you? Or you withdraw into sadness. Then there's self-doubt. In other words, you wonder if you are too needy or unreasonable. And then there's the silence. You stop asking for what you need to avoid more pain. And so the cycle continues, deepening the emotional starvation. Now, having said that, this book is on Amazon. Do a search for Mark Hutten Amazon books. Please like and subscribe. Think of your Asperger's husband in this case as someone who has a severe sunburn. And you know, when you've ever had a severe sunburn, just a touch, just a mild touch by somebody else leaves you screaming. And so your Asperger's husband has already suffered some emotional damage from social failures previously in his life. And so now the slightest touch, in other words, the slightest positive or even constructive criticism, will be felt as painful criticism and put-downs. I hope that makes sense. And at the very least, maybe you can understand why he is so super sensitive to criticism.
It is often the case that when a neurodiverse couple gets married, one has autism, one does not, that one or both parties brought some previous emotional scars into the marriage. There was some emotional disruption prior to the marriage. You bring it into the relationship, and now you're blaming one another for those emotional scars when the other person's not to blame. It's something that happened in childhood, perhaps. You'll have to do individual work in that case. If you're not okay inside with you, there's no way you're going to be able to work on the relationship problems. You got to fix you first and then work on the marriage problems second. So don't put the cart before the horse. Also, don't expect your spouse to be able to fix you. If this is something that's going on inside of you that was there before you even bumped into one another, you can't expect your spouse to fix that. Your spouse cannot heal your old emotional wounds.
Especially the neurotypical spouses. It would be really awesome if you could have a little bit of grace and mercy and compassion for your autistic spouse, because he has a developmental disorder. That's the key term right there, developmental. That means his emotional brain is not and did not fully develop. So when he was a child, he was always lagging. His peers were always ahead of him in the social and emotional sense. They had social skills that he didn't. They had emotional intelligence that he didn't. And worse than that, he hit a ceiling at some point. So his emotional development was always behind, and then at some point it hit a ceiling. So you could have an autistic spouse, for example, and let's say he's 45 years old chronologically. Emotionally, he's more like a 14-year-old. So if you're going to connect with people in a social sense, you have to have emotional intelligence. So if you would say that your autistic spouse lacks social skills, it's because he lacks the development, a normal development of his emotional brain. Hello, dear ladies who may have Cassandra syndrome. I created this channel for you because I care about people going through that, and it's not just a female thing, but 95% of the time it seems to be the neurotypical wife dealing with the ASD husband. But at any rate, the point of this video is if you want to do a private paid coaching session via Zoom, feel free to email me and we'll set something up. I would love to have your husband involved too. And by the way, I have 2 groups for ASD husbands. you can email me and I'll send you the links. I would love to get him in one of my groups, and then I can work on him on your behalf. So email me if you want to talk to me on Zoom. Also email me if there's a snowball's chance in hell that you can get your ASD husband in one of my groups. Also, in this video here, if you have a question about what to do with Cassandra syndrome or how to deal with your ASD husband, please just keep it to one question. I promise you I will answer that question. Give me 24 hours or so. I post every day, sometimes 2 a day, so please subscribe, and I'll look forward to your questions, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Hey, quick message to sufferers of Cassandra syndrome out there. You've tried to deliver your message to your ASD husband 100 different ways, and still it doesn't land. So if conversations aren't working, use a different tool. We're going to talk about keeping it short and on one topic. So here's some ideas. First of all, don't talk while flooded, hungry, or multitasking. And also, schedule the talk. Could we do 10 minutes after dishes? One topic. So predictability lowers his anxiety. And if you put it on a shared calendar and his brain knows when we are going to have a short talk on one topic, it relaxes him enough to be able to hear you. So this note is going to only have 3 lines. It could be on a post-it note, index card, or a text. It's only going to have 3 lines. There's going to be a topic line, an I feel line, and a request line. Here it is. Topic. Weekend plans. I feel statement. Anxious when plans change last minute. Request. Decide by Friday 6 p.m. You're speaking in bullet points rather than full sentences. So keep that note concrete, short, and visual. That beats long emotional monologues. Big league. It's not dumbing down, it's building a bridge so that his brain can cross over to your brain. One behavior, one time frame, one metric. By the way, subscribe because I'll be doing videos several times a week. I don't want you to miss anything. A message to the neurotypical wives out there who suspect that their husband may be on the autism spectrum. Have you ever found yourself thinking, something is just different in my marriage and I can't quite put my finger on it? Maybe your spouse is brilliant, responsible, loyal, yet emotionally distant, hard to read, or easily overwhelmed. And maybe conflict feels one-sided. Maybe communication feels like 2 people speaking different languages. Okay, if so, you might be wondering whether autism spectrum disorder could be a part of the picture. Let's talk about how NT partners accidentally become the therapist, the trap nearly every NT wife falls into. When your ASD husband struggles with emotional regulation, communication, or empathy blind spots, you naturally compensate. Why wouldn't you? And at first, that works. Then it becomes a pattern, then a job, then an identity. You start anticipating emotional triggers, coaching him through every frustration, over-explaining your needs, translating his tone or behavior, absorbing his anxiety because he can't, walking on eggshells to keep the peace, and monitoring his meltdowns like a clinician, not a spouse. That's when the relationship shifts from marriage to management. Now, you didn't choose this. Your heart was in the right place again. You were doing the best that you knew how to do, given the circumstances. You adapted to survive. Yes, you did. Hey friends, Mark Hutten here. If you're a non-autistic wife feeling lonely in your marriage, this one's for you, because I want to talk about 3 things every NT wife needs to know in a neurodiverse marriage. Point number 1, you're not doing anything wrong. Your emotional needs are real. It isn't your fault that your ASD partner doesn't give you the connection the way you imagine. Brains can be wired differently, and connection doesn't always look the same on both sides. So understanding this isn't resignation, it's clarity. Point number 2. Safety comes first. People open up when they feel safe, not pressured. Lower tension, lower expectations for perfection, and invite connection gently. Try to create moments where you both can actually feel seen, even in small ways. Point number 3, you deserve balance too. It's okay to step back from the therapist on standby role in your home. You deserve equal emotional investment. So take care of your needs and reclaim your role as a partner instead of being a therapist for him all the time. Okay? You're not a parent. You're not a therapist. You're not an emotions manager. You're not the meltdown control police. So you need to let your ASD partner meet you as an equal, not as a caretaker. Now, if this resonates, pause with compassion, not guilt. You can love someone deeply and still ask for emotional support, and you deserve both connection and peace. Now, share this with another wife who needs to hear it today. You're not alone. Subscribe, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. You're saying that he seems emotionally distant. Ask him for his definition of that. Hey, what's your definition of emotional distance? And let him say, if he can come up with the answer, so you'll know what his definition is of being emotionally distant. But with respect to how can you cope with your feelings of loneliness, I would put it in the form of a request for him to help you feel less lonely. So this is you talking to your husband. If I were to video record you helping me feel less lonely when I download your actions as being emotionally distant. I'm not accusing you of being emotionally distant, but sometimes I download it that way and I feel lonely. And just in case you would want to help me with that, if I were to video record you helping me in those moments of loneliness, you would be saying or doing some of these things. Susan, a neurotypical wife married to an autistic husband, she is suffering from Cassandra syndrome. And she shared an email with me and she says she feels invisible. She said, she's referring to her ASD husband. She said, he never asks how my day is. I tell him he interrupts with a fact about something unrelated to what I'm talking about. And when I say I'm sad, he offers a solution instead of comfort. I know he loves me, but I don't feel loved. And when I try to explain, he says, but I do all these things for you. So Susan wasn't ungrateful. You know, she appreciated his efforts, but she longed for something different. Eye contact, touch, shared laughter, emotional safety. And without it, she felt like she was fading. Does this sound familiar? Do you ever feel like your emotions just don't register? You know, like you could be crying in plain sight and it wouldn't change a thing. Okay, well, you're not invisible, you're just unheard in a language mismatch. So let's try to work on that. Let's talk about the loop of invisibility first. You hint, he misses it, you get louder, he shuts down, and then you apologize for being too emotional, and the loop repeats. And then before long, you start editing yourself. You stop sharing the small things, and that's where connection used to live. You know, invisibility doesn't happen overnight. It happens by 1,000 tiny silences. Now let's talk about intent versus impact. Your ASD spouse does not intend to hurt you, but the impact, it's real. Autistic partners can miss tone and subtext, but that doesn't mean your longing is invalid. You can love someone deeply and still feel profoundly lonely. And saying that out loud doesn't make you cruel, it just makes you honest. Now let's talk about reclaiming visibility. When you're talking to him, you can say it simply. When I share something important, I need a response even if it's short. Or you can say, if you can't talk now, please tell me when we can talk. Then schedule weekly check-ins. Keep them short, one topic, no distraction. I said, weekly check-ins, short, one topic, no digital devices or distractions. And if this talk starts going south again, you can say, okay, I'm pausing right now. I'll revisit tomorrow. Now that isn't withdrawal or a shutdown, that's wisdom. And every time you do this, you come back into focus, not as a caretaker, but as a full person. So I would like for you to comment below and let me know what you're going to do this week in the way of using your scripts. We talked about 3 of them in this video. You're not asking for too much. You're just asking for enough. Use your scripts. By the way, subscribe now because I'll be doing videos several times a week and I don't want you to miss anything. The emotional hunger of people that suffer from Cassandra syndrome is often hidden behind a polished exterior. You may smile at family dinners, laugh at parties, and praise your spouse's strengths to others. But when the guests leave and the house grows quiet, you kind of return to a world of silence and unmet needs. And this double life, if we'll call it that, creates deep isolation because others only see a stable, successful, ASD spouse, and they don't often believe your private pain, and they may even view you as being overly emotional and dramatic and so on. And this disbelief deepens the wound and reinforces silence. So those living with an autistic spouse, we're not making him out to be a bad guy. I'm sure he's a great guy. I like him just fine, probably very smart. But if you are suffering from Cassandra syndrome, then you're feeling more isolated in marriage than you ever felt when you were alone. And you kind of wonder why love doesn't really feel like love. And you may believe that you're being selfish and wanting too much. You may mourn the loss of the marriage you had imagined. And you've kind of learned to meet all your emotional needs at the cost of intimacy. Now, these consequences are not a reflection of weakness or selfishness. They're the consequences of emotional deprivation. So if this resonates with you, please like and subscribe. I'll have more videos coming up. There's going to be a link to a video right there that will take you to some things that you can do given the cards that you've been dealt. All right, thanks. Cassandra syndrome is rarely obvious to outsiders. Unlike infidelity, addiction, or abuse, it doesn't make for dramatic stories. Instead, it lives in subtler places, like, the dinner table where conversations feel mechanical, the living room where silence stretches for hours, the bedroom where intimacy has withered, the therapy session where the spouse says, he's not a bad man, he just doesn't see me. It's these small daily absences that Cassandra syndrome takes root. So if this resonates with you, like, subscribe. Also, if you'll do a search on Amazon, you'll find my book for Cassandra syndrome sufferers. Just do a search for Mark Hutten Amazon books. The book is called, I'm looking at it right now, Living in the Shadow, Healing from Cassandra Syndrome in an Autistic Marriage. Stay in touch, comment below. So during this sacred space time, you can journal, walk, meditate, do nothing, sit in silence, work on hobbies, listen to calming music, whatever you want to do. The practice itself doesn't matter. What matters is that you regularly move your body out of hypervigilance and into regulation. This may lead to boundaries like, I don't engage in serious conversations after 7 p.m. Or if you shut down, I won't pursue. I'll wait 30 minutes and then check in with you. Or I need breaks during high stimulation moments. Or I won't internalize tone differences as personal. Acceptance plus boundaries equals emotional freedom. The real problem isn't the request. The real problem is role confusion. You're trying to meet clinical needs using relational tools, and it doesn't work. So let's separate these roles once and for all. We need to look at what a partner is responsible for. As a neurotypical wife, you are responsible for some stuff. Speaking respectfully, being truthful, sharing your emotional experience, setting boundaries, staying open to repair, offering kindness, choosing connections when you can, stepping away when you must. That's it. Period. You are not responsible for managing meltdowns, calming anxiety, preventing shutdowns, fixing past trauma, being the safe person 24/7, teaching social skills, providing therapy-level emotional support. Those needs fall into a different category and they require a different solution. A quick message to neurotypical wives out there who may be married to a husband on the autism spectrum and you are also suffering from Cassandra syndrome. And I'm not making your husband out to be a bad guy. I'm sure he's a great guy. I would like him just fine. And I know that you know that he's a good guy. But one of the most painful realities in a neurodiverse marriage where one person is autistic, the other one is not, is this mismatch of love languages. You, as the neurotypical wife, may want words of affection, for example. You long to hear, I love you, but your ASD husband shows love by fixing your computer. You probably long for quality time. You want conversation over dinner, but he wants silence after work. You may long for physical touch. You have craved spontaneous intimacy for how many years, but he may recoil from touch when overwhelmed. So the result is a cycle where you ask for love in your language. He doesn't deliver for a variety of reasons, largely due to ASD traits, not out of malicious intent. But then you feel rejected, then he feels criticized, and then both parties retreat further. So in a neurodiverse marriage, love is present, but it's not experienced. So if it's there, but you don't experience it, your nervous system just assumes that it's not there. So that's very understandable. Anyway, if this resonates, then please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.
If he has ASD level 1, he has mind blindness issues, emotions blindness issues, executive function deficits, all of which create huge anxiety. What I run into most often, if he were to be honest with himself, he often feels confused and insecure in the relationship. This causes a lot of anxiety. He's always in the process of alleviating anxiety, either with a shutdown or a meltdown or just staying busy outside of the relationship. But unfortunately, and now this is the message to the guys in here, your anxiety reduction strategies have, in most cases, made your anxiety worse because you just kick the can down the road.
From the NT wife's perspective, life often feels like a massive project she has to manage. She might see a dozen things that need doing at any given moment: bills, appointments, social plans, household chores, and so on. She often becomes the default manager of all this emotional labor and the executive functioning of the home. Not because she's a control freak, but because she's terrified that if she doesn't do it, everything will fall apart. And this isn't a judgment on her ASD husband. It's a practical response to what feels to her like a very real possibility. When she says, "Don't forget the trash goes out tonight," it's not coming from a place of wanting to treat him like a child. It's coming from the anxiety of all the times the trash was, in fact, forgotten. The mental energy it takes to hold all these details in her head is huge. Her reminders are her attempt to offload some of the mental weight to create a team system. Message to all the people out there suffering from Cassandra syndrome. This may be one of the hardest questions you'll ever ask yourself. Is it autism or is it abuse? I'm specifically addressing the neurotypical wives that are in a relationship with an ASD husband and you haven't had your emotional needs met for years and years. So let's take a deep breath together and untangle what's really happening beneath the confusion. Autism changes capacity. It changes how a brain processes emotion, how it reads cues, how it tolerates stress. So it can mean that your ASD husband truly struggles to notice tone or facial expressions or the emotional meaning behind your words. Now, that's not cruelty. That's wiring, okay? But abuse, if we're really talking about abuse, that's a choice, not a wiring issue. It's the deliberate use of power, control, or humiliation to dominate another person. So, when you're trying to sort out which one you're living with, don't just ask why something happened. Ask what happens next. If someone can't do something, you'll see confusion and often remorse. If they won't, you'll see defensiveness, blame, and entitlement. So let's make that real. If your ASD husband forgets to respond to your text because he happened to be hyper-focused, that's a capacity issue. If he read it, ignored it, and then later he said, "You're so needy," that's a choice. So capacity deserves patience. Choice demands boundaries. I work with men only, women only, groups of couples only. I have all the demographics covered, all the bases covered. And in almost all cases, the NT wife's approach to try to get you to be emotionally reciprocal ends up raising your anxiety such that you want to just disconnect from her, purely for anxiety reduction purposes, which yields the opposite result of what she's trying to do. And I'm not trying to blame anybody, but I will go on record as saying that her method of getting you to be a team player and getting you to connect and and be more empathic and affectionate. Her method of going about that has, in too many cases, driven you away.
Now let's talk about reassigning emotional responsibility back to your ASD husband. Here's the part that may feel uncomfortable for you, but incredibly freeing. The NT wife also has the mom brain and feels compelled to fix, to work on, to help. And why wouldn't you? Hey, your heart's in the right place. God bless you. But your ASD husband must carry his own emotional weight. That means he calms himself before re-engaging. He seeks therapy or coaching. He practices skills independently. He self-monitors rising anxiety. He regulates before discussing sensitive topics. And he does his work, not outsource it to you. That's not abandonment. It's empowerment. He grows, you breathe, and the relationship stabilizes. Let me leave you with this. Your role in the marriage is partner, not therapist. When you reclaim that role, everything shifts. Resentment decreases. Emotional weight becomes shared. Communication becomes clearer. Connection becomes possible again. And both partners step into their actual responsibilities. If you've been carrying too much, if you've been doing all the emotional labor, if you've been trying to help enough to make the relationship work, now is the moment to step back. Not out of the relationship, but out of the role that never belonged to you in the first place. On your side of the wall, as the NT spouse, you see a sink full of dishes. You mentally group the task. You start automatically. On the ASD spouse's side of the wall, he sees dozens of micro steps, no clear starting point, competing sensory and cognitive input, and no internal go signal. So nothing happens. Not every Cassandra partner experiences the syndrome in the same way. Some feel occasional pangs of loneliness. Others describe years of despair. Some cope by throwing themselves into work, hobbies, or parenting, and others sink into a depression. But all share a common thread, which is a sense of being unseen and unheard by the person they love most. Now, some spouses resist the label Cassandra syndrome because they worry that it pathologizes their pain. But having a name is not about blame, it's about validation. Without a name, your suffering feels invisible. With a name, you can reframe your struggles as real and legitimate. You can recognize that you're not alone, and you can begin to seek support from those who understand. A name turns isolation into solidarity. It transforms silence into speech. This is my book, available on Amazon. Please subscribe and like.
She feels kind of ripped off. It's like, I got tricked. I got fooled. I've been cheated out of my dream. This is not what I signed up for. This is not at all what I was expecting as a 16-year-old girl that was already looking forward to someday, having a family and whatnot. You weren't having that thought at 16 years old. You didn't have the thought one time, gosh, I cannot wait to get married and have kids. I'm really looking forward to that day. You never had that thought at all. You're more concerned maybe with playing your games or some kind of special interest thing. So in summary, she feels like her dreams have been stolen, and she feels like she's at the wrong move.
Your ASD husband has probably said to you, well, you're so emotional. And you may have said to him, well, you're so robotic. I say, congratulations, you're both very observant. Quick message to the NT spouses out there. Imagine sitting down, being forced to sit down at a poker table and play poker, and you have no freaking idea how to play poker. Okay, everybody else does. You're the only one that doesn't know. But you got to play the game. You got to try to figure it out fast. That's how your autistic spouse feels in social and emotional situations that are over his head. Quick message to NT spouses. Think of your autistic husband as a battery, and he will only be able to engage in social activities that are laden with emotional intricacies for so long before his battery is. So autism is no respecter of persons any more than Hurricane Ian was a respecter of people in Fort Myers Beach, Florida, for example. It doesn't respect the person who has autism. It doesn't respect the person who's married to the person who has autism. It's been around for a long time, allegedly a few hundred years, and a lot of people suspect that it's been around since day one. So it's not going anywhere, not anytime soon. It is what it is. Don't take it personally any more than you would take Hurricane Ian personally. Well, I can't believe that hurricane just happened to
tear down my house, I'm taking that as a personal affront. Hurricane wasn't concerned about you, wasn't thinking about you. It had nothing to do with you. Now, having said that, you can still feel the pain associated with being involved in the event, on the receiving end of maybe a meltdown from your autistic husband, on the receiving end of storms that tear up your house. So I'm not saying you're not affected by it, but I am saying that it is something that exists in the universe, and you can either fight it or accept it. But if you fight it, it always wins.
Okay, hey, let's talk briefly about understanding shutdowns and overwhelm. I want you to be thinking in terms of noticing early warning signs. So your autistic husband might feel tense, he might go blank, he might lose words, he might stare at the floor, he might leave. And you as the neurotypical partner might feel anxious, talk faster, push harder, pursue him when he tries to leave. So when these signs appear, it's time to slow down, not dig in. So shutdown and meltdown are two sides of the same coin. Both are forms of nervous system overwhelm. They're not choices, ladies. They're automatic responses. Recognizing the pattern early allows both of you to intervene with compassion instead of criticism. So each of you as the neurotypical wife and your ASD husband, I'd like for you to list your top 3 warning signs that you're approaching overload and share them with one another. Example, when I stop making eye contact, that means I'm at my limit. And then agree on a cue to signal that it's time to pause. NT partners don't walk on eggshells because they're weak. They do it because they're chronically overstimulated, emotionally undersupported, and trying to prevent conflict or shutdowns. Your nervous system has learned that any wrong tone, wrong timing, or wrong phrasing, heaven forbid, can lead to misunderstanding, overwhelm, or withdrawal, or he just feels criticized and, well, now we're back to having an adult temper tantrum, aren't we? When silence becomes your home language, love starts to feel like isolation. So let's talk about how to live through shutdowns without losing yourself. What's the true meaning to his silence, your ASD husband? A shutdown isn't rejection, it's overload. The autistic brain can only handle so much social noise before it goes offline. But your body reads silence as abandonment. So the moment you most need reassurance, you get distance. That mismatch cuts deep. How do you navigate these shutdowns? Well, when it happens, separate the person from the moment. In other words, you can say calmly, I'm going to read in the bedroom for a bit. Join me if you can. That's self-protection, not punishment. And later, when calm returns, use a debrief like, when you went quiet, I felt anxious. Next time, could we check in after 30 minutes? So that's one gentle structure that can save the relationship from chronic misfires. How do you care for your nervous system? Ground yourself, feel your feet, name 5 things you see, text a safe friend, remind yourself this is temporary, I'm safe, I still matter. So when you stay regulated, you break the generational pattern of emotional panic that silence tries to trigger. So I'd like for you to tell me in the comments one phrase you'll use next time instead of spiraling. Also, be sure to visit CassandraSyndromeRecovery.com. I have a group that meets 4 weeks, 1 hour each week. It's a recovery group, and you'll get to meet some recovery sisters. In other words, other ladies going through the same thing that you're going through. So, you're learning to protect your peace, and that's power.
He won't get motivated until he's almost convinced that he's going to lose you. Because remember, I said a little bit ago, he's going to have a hard time living independently. To just be a bachelor and wing it on his own, at a few significant levels, he wouldn't make it. He might make it financially, and he might make it to the point where he can function fairly normally, but from an emotional standpoint, most guys, when they on the spectrum, when they do get divorced, and then they are on their own, they really have a hard time dealing with life, and their depression and anxiety skyrocket. What I run into all the time when I'm working with the neurodiverse couples online, when she has Cassandra syndrome, the NT wife that is, she feels like he doesn't care and that everything else is more important than she is. Now, on his end, the ASD husband, he feels like he can't do anything right. Doesn't matter what he says or does, it's never good enough, can never meet your expectations. At some level, he feels like a failure, and so he distances himself for safety reasons. It's like, I can't help her the way I'm supposed to help her, and I feel like a failure, and so the best I can do is just kind of keep my distance in order to avoid conflict. Of course, now when he does that, she's feeling even more rejected and emotionally abandoned, which makes her even more upset and lonely, and she may complain as a result, and why wouldn't she? So now he in turn feels even more like a failure and a disappointment, so he distances himself even more, which makes her feel even more rejected and abandoned, and we get into this cycle. You see what I'm talking about, right? So if that sounds like you, and if we would have the chance to do an online video call using Zoom, we could figure out what's going on in your specific situation, so we can reestablish communication and connection and understanding. It's all one big misunderstanding. Email me, we'll set something up. Also, I post every day, so please subscribe, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Fourth and final thing is anxiety, which is the result of the first three. If I don't understand why people think the way they do and have certain belief systems and certain perspectives, and I don't understand why they feel the way they do, and I have problems controlling my emotions and understanding abstract, non-literal language, and I have problems initiating tasks, I have problems multitasking when there's social and emotional nuances involved, I have problems planning and organizing what my NT wife wants me to do. I have a working memory deficit, so I forget a lot of things that she wants me to do because it doesn't even make my radar, etc. Then I'm going to have a lot of anxiety. My world is going to be highly unpredictable. What am I going to do if I have a 24/7 unpredictability? I'm going to try to establish as much predictability as possible. How's that going to look? To my NT wife, it's going to appear as if I'm stubborn, rigid, one-track mind, self-absorbed. I'm going to insist on routine. I'm going to have structure. I'm going to hate change, especially surprise change. I'm going to spend most of my time in my comfort zone, which unfortunately is not around you. Quick message to the NT wives out there. You need to begin engaging in some forms of escapism. Your autistic husband does that. He does maybe some version of a shutdown, and so he's over there decompressing, playing video games or on the computer, doing something where he is basically decompressing while you're over there compressing. So he has his forms of escape. You need to find your forms of escape and use them frequently. I know this may go against the grain of your wanting to charge in there and tackle relationship problems, especially when you're upset. That's not escape, that's imprisonment. I'm not saying never try to tackle problems, but you need to find some ways to decompress too. You know, what are some forms of escapism? Sleep, vacation, leaving the house for a while, going to the gym, working out, hot shower with some wine, meditation. There's all kinds of ways to escape. You got to start hunting those ways down and using them, because you're the one that's getting mentally sick over this neurodiverse marriage problems. Not him. He's escaping. He's unwinding. He's relaxing. He's engaging his parasympathetic nervous system. He's reducing his cortisol and adrenaline levels. Why aren't you? Escapism, ladies. Come up with some ideas. Implement promptly. Whoever he is, if he doesn't understand your motives, your behavior, why you're saying what you're saying, why you're feeling the way you feel, he will fill in the blank with something that is usually negative. In fact, I will say always negative. If I don't understand this thing, I'm going to fill in the blank with something. I'm going to give it my best guess. And it's going to be a negative spin for sure. It's going to be a negative reframe of your behavior. And so now I think that you're against me. I think you're out to get me. I think you're being parental. I think you're chastising me. I think that you think that I'm defective and flawed and you're trying to correct me and fix me.
Starting does not equal not wanting to start. Your ASD partner may fully intend to do the chore. He may even feel bad about not doing it. But between intention and action, there can be a neurological barrier. And this is the executive function wall. Quick message to neurotypical spouses out there who may be suffering from Cassandra syndrome. You know, everybody says the holidays are joyful, but for some neurotypical wives, they're the loneliest time of the year. When you're living with Cassandra syndrome, holidays amplify what's already there, which is feeling unseen, feeling unheard, feeling emotionally alone, even in a crowded room. You know, you as the neurotypical wife, you're expected to smile, to host, to connect, and be grateful while your emotional needs stay unmet. And traditions highlight the gap between what you hoped for and what actually is. Now, if this is you, it's not a weakness, it's chronic emotional disconnection, and the holidays turn up the volume. You're not crazy, you're not alone, and support does exist. So follow this channel for clarity, validation, and real tools for healing. I have a Cassandra syndrome recovery group. I have Amazon books on Cassandra syndrome, recovery from that. So I'm interested in the comment section below. What is things that help you get through the holidays? And in the meantime, God bless, and I hope you do have a happy holiday. Thank you. If you're in a neurodiverse marriage and you find yourself thinking, how am I supposed to make all these accommodations with my ASD spouse? You're not alone. Many neurotypical partners end up, without meaning to, becoming the emotional coach, the meltdown manager, the communication interpreter, the social guide, and yes, the therapist. But here's the truth. You're not the therapist. You're the partner. And carrying both roles is not sustainable, not for you and not for the relationship. And hey, I know your heart was in the right place, but your therapy often made a bad problem worse. So today I'm going to give you permission and a blueprint to step out of that therapist role and reclaim your place as an equal spouse. Hey, this is Mark Hutten. Would you like to schedule a one-on-one Zoom call? Okay, it's so simple. Just look under any of my videos in the description area. Click on this Calendly link. Now you see my calendar. Pick your month, your day, anytime that's available. Enter your name and email address. Then you'll get a follow-up email with the Zoom link on the day and time that you picked. And voila, we will talk.